to have a legend to convey to the reader or the viewer what it is we're actually showing. So if I say insert legend, this box shows up. And here in the right list, these are all the layers in my map that are going to be added to my legend. When I myself look at this map, I think I can look at it and say, I know what the counties are. I don't need a legend to tell me that. I just want to show the wind potential. So if I go to this dialog, I'm going to select Counties SC and click this arrow pointing to the left to remove it from the list. So I'm only going to leave that wind potential in there. Does anybody have the base map showing up on theirs? No? Okay. You can also remove the base map from your legend if it gets added. And then I'll say next. Here we can give a title to our legend if you want to, and you can also specify the font type. So maybe I'll just leave mine at legend. I'll bump up the text size just a little bit. And I'll say next. You can also add a frame and a border and a drop shadow. So maybe I want a 1-point frame and a white background and a 20% gray drop shadow. And then I can say next. There are a couple of dialogues that allow you to really customize how things are placed and what symbol you want to use. I'm going to skip these for now and just say next and finish. So now I have my legend here in a box. And I can place that. I can resize it if I want to. Or shrink it down. So now notice the way things have been labeled in this legend. If I were going to print this, do you think I'd want to leave this South Carolina _ 50 meter _ wind? I mean, it's read directly what the name of my layer is from the map. But that's not really a meaningful name to use in something I want somebody else to view. So let's go over to my table of contents and right-click that layer and go to the properties. And let's go to the general name. Here you can actually specify the name of the layer. It doesn't change the name of the data set it's referencing. It's only changing the name that shows up in the table of contents and therefore in my legend. So I'm going to rename this 50 meter wind potential class. Sorry? Right, because again, this isn't changing the name of the data set. It's only changing the display name. So spaces are fine. We want to make it readable now. So if I say apply, now notice I have a more human interpretable name in the table of contents. And I'll say OK. And then what else do you notice about the legend and what's showing up? I see two things I want to fix.
All other values.
So yeah, all other values, right? When we generated that color scale and classes, by default, it looks for things that don't fall into the categories. But all of our data fall into 1 through 6. There's nothing in all other values, and it's not really meaningful. So if I right-click my 50 meter wind potential class, go back to the properties and the symbology, by default, this checkbox shows up here for all other values. So if I click that and uncheck the box and say OK, now it goes away. So the other thing I would change is this WPC. It's kind of redundant at this point because I have 50 meter wind potential class. So just like we changed the layer name, we can change what's called the alias of that field in the table of contents. So I'm going to click once on WPC and then click again. Not double clicking, but click once and click again. And I'm actually just going to delete it entirely. So now notice that goes away and it doesn't show up anymore. So some other things that are good to add would be a north arrow is pretty common. So if I go to Insert and go to North Arrow, I get this dialog where there are, dozens, if not hundreds of choices. So feel free to pick one you like. I'm a pretty boring person, so I like pretty boring north arrows myself. But you can move it, you can resize it, and place it on the map. And then another feature that's good to have would be a scale bar. So if I say Insert Scale Bar, again, there are lots of different options for how you want to show it, whether you want to have tick marks along a line or do alternating boxes. For instance, alternating scale bar 1 here. So I'll say OK, it gets added to the map. And notice if I resize it, it will change both the font and then also the units to break up my scale. Right? So generally you want to have some sort of round units, like 50 miles, 100 kilometers, whatever it ends up being. So I'll drag that guy into the map here. And now this may not be the most visually appealing map I could have created. I could probably spend some time rearranging elements and playing with fonts and things like that to make it look a bit nicer. I now have a functioning map that has at least all the items you'd want to include in a map to show in a report. So now let's export that map. Is everybody at this point? Okay.
This part is blue.
Uh-huh.
This part is blue, but my legend for this is not showing this color.
Right. So when we set up the legend, we turned off the counties because it's actually the counties that are blue.
Okay.
So if you click, well, turn them back on, but then click this guy to open the symbol selector, and then just say hollow.
Okay.
Yep. And so if you want to, you can pan around and actually zoom it back in to maximize that.
Okay. Yeah.
Right? And if you want to zoom in, you can
Yeah.
do so.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Why did you remove this and this
Okay, let's open the layer properties.
layer property?
Yep. Oh, sorry, no. The layer properties for this layer. Yep. And go to symbology and uncheck that at all other values and say OK. So there wasn't anything that fell out of category 1 through 6.
And how about WPC?
There, if you click once and then click again to edit the name, I just deleted it entirely. Yep.
And how about the north arrow? I'm not getting
And
it.
those are all insert, say north arrow.
Oh,
Mm-hmm.
thank you.
Sure. All right. So to export this, it's, sorry? It disappeared. Where'd it go?
Does Control Z work on this?
Sometimes. If you click this left, this blue arrow, this will go to the
There it is.
previous extent.
There we go. I don't know what it's doing up there, but
So yeah, you can still pan and zoom in that map itself, just like normal. All right. So to export the map, it's not exactly the same as saving it, right? So if I say save right now, it wants me to save the map document, but it's not going to export this to the format I want. So instead, I'm going to go to File and say Export Map. And here I'm going to navigate to where I want it to go. Mine defaulted to the Introduction to GIS folder, which is fine. And then we have a lot of file types we can choose from. So we could do a PDF, a TIFF, EPS, PNG, JPEG, so on and so forth. So I'm going to just say PDF for mine. You can also adjust the resolution. If you need a very high resolution to print at a large size, you can make it lower for the web. I'll just again leave mine at 300 DPI, which mine defaulted to. And I'm just going to change the title to My First Map with my initials, which I already did, and then I'll say save. So then if I go to my that Introduction to GIS folder, I can see, if I bring it up here, now I can see that that same document I just created. So is everybody able to export the map? All right. Cool.